Today we're driving my 2022 Subaru BRZ and my 2001 Honda S2000. We're going to be doing a comparison. Both of these cars are kind of my daily drivers at this point. The BRZ, you guys have seen many videos on that. S2000, same story. They're both on winter tires today. We have substitute TOPher here for driving and moral support. So yeah, you're going to be giving some of your thoughts at the end of the video too. So let's get right into it. You guys know about these cars. We've filmed so many videos on them. The basics with my BRZ, I've done a few modifications since my last update on this. I have a catted unequal length header on here now from FT86 Speedfactory. Picked it up on eBay for 600 bucks. This has winter tires on it, a 1.5-inch lift, a 4.3 diff from a 2017 car, axle back exhaust from MRT. It's a pretty lightly modified car, but it's kind of my perfect BRZ build. It's a bit of a rally car. I took it off-roading about a week or two ago. It was a lot of fun, and it's just a blast. You can road trip it, you can daily it, it's practical, it's got tons of space inside. As the livable sports car, it's kind of no contest. The BRZ wins out. This is the more usable vehicle. S2000, it's just a screamer, and everyone loves a screamer. 9,000 RPM. This is an AP1. We have the exact same size winter tires on here, 205 60R16s. S2000 just getting a bunch of BRZ hand-me-down tires. That's basically what's happening as the baby brother. It's got about 145,000 miles, so it's a little rough around the edges, but as a driver, it's awesome. It just feels great. Going to get this undercoated rust-proof from Krown here soon, so it won't rust out this winter. But I love this thing. I love the fact that it's a convertible. It's so raw, it's so visceral. Everything vibrates and shakes. It has good steering feel. It feels light and nimble. It's just a little bit smaller dimensionally than the BRZ, but it feels a little bit sharper. The diff in the S2000 works barely with these winter tires in the wet. It does lock up. You can slide this thing around some corners, have some fun with it, but the BRZ dynamically is just a better car to put around a corner. It's more sorted in stock form. It's just a little bit more predictable. It's easier to drive. S2000, it's a bit of a knife edge. So it's kind of a trickier driving experience. And in some ways, it's very rewarding because it's a bit of a challenge. But you have to kind of be a little bit more careful with the S2000. Get to know it a little bit. That said, it's a blast to drive on winter tires. It's actually surprisingly easy to slide around. The BRZ just kind of drifts itself. So it's kind of a graduation from BRZ to the next level. I feel like S2000 is that natural next progression. If you're looking for a vehicle to kind of progress into as a driver, if you've already mastered everything BRZ-wise, S2000 could be a good choice. So I've been thinking about if I had to get rid of one of these cars, which one would I get rid of? And I just can't make a decision. They're both so good.
That's real too. He's been talking about that for months.
I can't part with either. I think what's going to happen is I'm going to end up getting an ND Miata, and I'll just have all three of the same car.
There you go. Instead of selling one, just get another one.
Just have all three. Because there's things I love about all of them. Let's start with the BRZ. I mean, the big win here is that this is just such a good sports car. It's engaging. It's exciting. You can modify it in ways that you can just suit your preference. I've turned mine into a bit of a rally car. My BRZ has a tow hitch. I'm sure you could put a tow hitch on an S2000 too, but I throw my mountain bike back here and go take this mountain biking. I could put my son in the back. The rear seats actually have a decent amount of room once they're folded up, of course. Folded down, you've got a ton of trunk space. I used to put my mountain bike in the back of my first-gen BRZ. You can't quite do that with a second-gen car because the trunk opening just is smaller with the new design language. But I think both cars look fantastic. I mean, they are just true, pure sports cars. The curb weights between the two are actually surprisingly close. I think the BRZ premium curb weight is like 2815, S2000's 2809. So just
6 pounds.
6 pounds, yeah, a few pounds. I love the fact that the S2000 is a convertible. It's so nice to drive this with the top down. It's such an exciting car to rev out and experience. It's old, so that comes with some positives and negatives. Reliability, maintenance, cost of ownership is going to be a little bit more. Cost of entry is probably going to be about the same. This BRZ, all said and done, was about $30,000 out the door. S2000s, you can get nice examples. AP1s are a little bit less, AP2s are a little bit more. I bought this for 12 grand, and then we've put a little bit of money into it to fix it up. but the interior is a little bit rough. The exterior has been repainted.
The interior is nicer now, though.
It's nicer now. I just put a new steering wheel on here, new gauge cluster lens, new surround. So we're freshening up this interior just a little bit with time. But I like that these cars, they kind of follow the same philosophy. Simple, driver-focused interiors, physical controls, switchgear. I mean, gosh, these cars are over 20 years apart. And the BRZ just, you look inside and there's just not a whole lot going on there. Like in the S2000, it's like a brand new car from 20 years ago. And that's honestly one of my favorite things about the BRZ. And my favorite thing about the S2000 is that no traction control. All of your controls are right here for the driver. The passenger can't even do anything really. You have a door that covers the radio because who needs to listen to music while you're driving? And everything else is just angled straight at the driver. It's awesome. As far as power figures, specs go, you guys probably know them already, but we'll just repeat them. 2.4 liter boxer 4-cylinder making 228 horsepower. This is probably making a little bit more now at this point with the unequal length header, the exhaust. I removed the charcoal filter in the airbox. That's probably good for about 5 horsepower, you know, whatever. So let's say 230 horsepower, S2000, 240 horsepower, 9,000 RPM redline. Both have 6-speed manuals, both have limited slip differentials. I think this is the formula for the most fun. It's so good. All right, you drive the S2000, I'll drive the BRZ, and then we'll come back, swap, and talk about it a little bit.
Sounds good. Are the keys in this?
No.
Okay.
You need them.
Now they're in my
Many of you know that I used to own a 2014 Subaru BRZ, put 60,000 miles on that car, really enjoyed it. There are some things that I like about this more. The extra refinements in here, it's just a little bit better from an NVH perspective. It's not as noisy in here. It's a little bit quieter, a little bit easier to live with on a daily basis. Steering isn't as good. It's lighter, but it's not you don't get as much feedback from the steering. Gearbox is slightly smoother to operate, and the power. The engine is the highlight here. This 2.4 boxer is just, it's torquier. They've pretty much gotten rid of the torque dip. It's a lot of fun to drive. You can hear that inside wheel slipping. Kind of an aggressive diff from the factory in this BRZ. It's pretty entertaining. Good visibility, good front end turn in. Again, we are on winter tires today. A little bit more torque from this BRZ versus the S2000's 2-liter. The AP2s with the 2.2-liter fixed a little bit of that. The BRZ definitely rides a little bit softer than the AP1 S2000s. Again, S2000s got a little bit softer as the years went on. They softened that rear end, gave it a little bit more cushion for those inertia moments around corners, reducing that snap oversteer. The BRZ is just a wonderful car to pilot around. It's comfortable. Unlike the GR86, it's not stiff. It's just a really good daily. It handles well on winter tires. It handles well on all seasons. It handles well on racing tires for the track. It kind of does it all. You have Apple CarPlay, all of your modern amenities. And you have a warranty. There's some peace of mind here knowing that you have a brand new car that has a factory warranty. And yes, okay, BRZs have had some issues recently with track driving, but you know what? I think those are issues that are pretty isolated to a handful of owners, and we haven't really seen this car for long enough to really get a lot of data points on reliability. So I'm going to chalk this up to still being a pretty reliable vehicle. I know the previous gen BRZ was bulletproof for the most part. S2000s, pretty well documented as reliable vehicles as well. They have their issues. You got to keep oil in them. My AP1 burns about a quart of oil every 1,000 miles or so. So something to look out for. Ultimately, the weak point with the BRZ is its engine, and I think its lack of character. You can throw a header on here, you can put an exhaust on here, and you can make it sound pretty good. But ultimately, compared to the S2000, and even compared to the Miata with an exhaust, for example, this Boxer 4-cylinder just falls short. It doesn't sound particularly good. It doesn't feel particularly refined. It's kind of this car's weak link. But elsewhere, this BRZ makes up for it. Makes up for it in the handling department and in the packaging. This is such a usable sports car, and it handles. The biggest difference with this new generation of BRZ is the increased suspension travel in the rear. And there's just so much more grip and traction from this chassis. And personally, I think this car is best enjoyed on a set of low grip all season tires or winters. It's just so much fun to throw around. That's why I've decided to lift this up and do a lot of dirt driving with it, because it's more enjoyable with less grip. Also, living in Michigan, I have 100% built this car for the roads that I drive on. It needs to be compliant, it needs to be comfortable, it needs to be able to take on huge potholes, and it does that very well. Let's make some more comparisons. So versus the S2000, everything in this BRZ is just a little bit softer, a little bit less sharp. There's more delay to the throttle response. Turn-in isn't as quick. It's just a little bit more comfortable and cushy. Not by much, but by a little bit. At the end of the day, if you need a sports car to do daily driving duty or be a practical proposition, it's kind of hard to beat this BRZ. It's so much fun to drive. It's easy to live with. It's not hard on the wallet. I can't believe these things cost what they do, honestly. I'm convinced that ultimately this is probably the best all-around sports car that you can buy these days. Yes, you can get cars that are faster, but you're going to be wearing through consumables. This still gets decent fuel economy. It's affordably priced. It just does everything. I can't really think of a sports car that does everything as well as this does for even double the price point, honestly. So that's why I bought this car again. I usually don't buy two of the same car. I wanted to get a Camaro SS1 LE. I wanted to get an M2. But the more I thought about it, the more I kept coming back to BRZ. And even though I wasn't completely in love with the stock GR86, the stock BRZs when I drove them at the launch events, I decided, you know what, maybe I'll try something different with this car. Maybe I'll lift it up, put it on rally tires, and I'm so glad I bought this car. It's just been an absolute riot to own and live with and enjoy. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I just can't bring myself to get rid of this thing. It is that good. So ultimately, you know, we're gonna go drive the S2000. That is a very different vehicle. It's a different flavor. It offers a different experience and a different level of fun. And I think ultimately, if you're seeking thrills and you just want a fun car, an S2000 or a Miata is probably the way to go. But if you want something that you can drive more often and use on a more regular basis, there's no contest that the BRZ is the clear winner. And again, as always, we've got all the modifications, changes, tweaks in the description with both these cars. Don't want to waste too much time going over everything, but basically I'm really happy with what I've done to this car. The most recent changes, the header, and I threw it on because I kind of wanted that Subaru burble. Who knows if it actually added any power and torque. It sounds nice, this exhaust setup is pretty ideal for my preferences. With the seats down, you can hear a bit of burble. It's not as aggressive as the Corsa that I had on my previous gen BRZ, but with the unequal length header, catted, I think it sounds great. It's not outrageous. It's just that perfect amount of tone. If anything, it's a little bit too quiet maybe, but honestly, I'm getting older. I don't want to wake up all the neighbors in the morning on a cold start anymore. So for my purposes, this is pretty much perfect. S2000 needs an exhaust, actually. I want to do the UK mod to that. I think that would sound perfect. So hopefully we can get that done here soon. Until then, though, BRZ sounds a little bit better than the S2000. All right, we'll just leave this running and have substitute Topher go for a rip as well. S2000 might be faster.
Yeah.
From 0 to 45.
I think so.
Yeah.
The steering in this is excellent.
The steering is
Great
quite
steering,
good.
Especially with the, you know what? The new steering wheel feels thicker.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit
it has
thicker.
more leather on it.
Well, the leather was literally like peeling off the old one. It was bad.
Something's rattling.
Oh, it's the AC.
Oh.
That's what it is. The steering in the S2000 is surprisingly good for being an E-Pass rack, and compared to the BRZ, it's just so sharp.
Yeah.
Even on winter tires.
Okay.
Fun?
Yes. Very fun. Not a ton of grip.
Not a ton of grip.
Not
No.
a ton of front end grip today.
Yeah.
On these tires. So.
These so tire for tire, these Michelins, I think they're probably better in the snow,
Yeah.
but in the wet and the dry, these Falken Winterpeak F Ice ones are great. They're like $80 a tire. Those are not $80 a tire. They're a lot more
I was
expensive.
gonna say they're probably double that.
The Michelins are probably double that. These are so good. They're great in the wet. They're great in the dry. They look like, if you turn the wheel just a little bit, and while you're in there, give it a rev, they look like rally tires. Look at them. They're studdable. So a little bit harder of a compound maybe, but oh, they're just so good. Keep going, keep going. That sounds good.
Sounds really good.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. I think the header needed to break in a little bit, season some, because you need to get to know each other.
Yeah. It sounds more like a Subaru now.
It does. All right, S2000 time. S2000 is looking better with some of the recent improvements. Definitely some wear items. This car has lived a well-used life. One owner before us, and might repair the seats here in a little bit, but I kind of like that this is a little bit beat up. It makes me not feel so bad about driving it more often and getting some enjoyment out of it. So, the thing you need to know about the S2000, with the top down, this is just the best car. It's so much fun. It's so enjoyable. With the top up, it's kind of miserable. Everything rattles. It's pretty loud. It's not something that you would necessarily want to daily, but it's still fun. That said, though, this car is just best enjoyed topless, as a convertible, as it was meant to be. That said, seats, very comfortable on long trips. You just get a little bit tired of the road noise and the wind noise. But that's kind of the case with any convertible. It can wear on you. So, I would rather do an 8-hour trip in the BRZ every day of the week over this S2000. That said, though, driving it a few hours here and there to the racetrack, it's not that bad of a proposition. As long as your suspension and exhaust setup is reasonable, this exhaust is completely stock, it's fine. These seats are actually more comfortable than I was expecting them to be. Now for the good stuff. This is the car that I take out if I want to just go for a drive. If it's evening, sunset, I'm feeling a little bit restless, I want to go out for a little rip in something. It's the S2000, not the BRZ that I grabbed the keys to. And that says a lot. That said, the BRZ still enhances and improves every trip that I take in it. S2000 doesn't necessarily do that all the time, but oh, it's just so much fun to drive. It's a blast. That's kind of why I own two of them. I own both of them because they're very different flavors. And VTEC and 9,000 RPM. The gearing here is tall, and part of that is just because the red line is so much higher than the BRZ. But wow, this motor is so exciting. Nothing really happens until above 6,000 RPM. Whereas on the other hand, the BRZ has some personality, some character, some torque, some power at low revs. This S2000, it just kind of feels like any other Honda under $6,000. You really have to rev this thing out for it to be exciting. And that's fine because it makes it more of an event. It's exciting, but maybe not as accessible. The AP2 definitely addressed some of that, but that's just part of this car's character. This 6-speed manual, just the best shifter in the business. The BRZ has a pretty good gearbox. This puts it to shame. It's so sweet. It's the right amount of travel, it's the right amount of resistance, notchy. You gotta love a good Honda S2000 transmission. It's what I like about my FL5 Civic Type R. It's what I love about the S2000. The engine transmission combo here is just about perfect. Still pretty easy to control at the limit. I love it. I absolutely love it. There's definitely more top end power here with the S2000. That changeover when VTEC kicks in, oh, it's so good. A couple years ago I did a comparison, BRZ S2000 Miata. It was a stock ND2 Miata. And honestly, the worst thing about a stock ND2 Miata is that it's just completely quiet. You can't hear a dang thing. Like, it's just silent. And with an exhaust, a Miata is transformed. And for driving thrills, modern amenities, and kind of overall sports car experience, I would also very highly recommend a new ND Miata, or a newer ND Miata. Any ND. You want the more powerful engine, the higher red line. The ND2 is kind of hard to beat. But you kind of get that high revving, exciting flavor from the engine, great gearbox feel that you get in the S2000, with a chassis that is just so lovely, so tunable, with so much character. And then you get the modern amenities, safety, warranty of a modern car. Granted, the Miata and the S2000 aren't very usable, but they're fun. And if that's what you're going for, if that's what you're looking for, you just want something that's a toy, you probably got to go for one of the convertibles. One thing I do like about the S2000 is these things are always going to hold their value. There are still a lot of very low mileage examples out there that have been well cared for, well kept. I got kind of lucky, found a cheap high mileage example that was a little rough around the edges, but a great driver. You'll notice the engine's smooth, no grinds or clunks from the gearbox. The clutch still works very well. The diff seems to hook up decently. They're out there, and because it's a Honda, it's been engineered to last. Little valve adjustment. You can throw some AP2 parts on these AP1s, make them a little bit more reliable for the track. You're still dealing with a 20-plus-year-old car, and that is going to come with some extra maintenance and headaches and investment, but ultimately I think it's worth it. This is one of those cars that I just don't want to stop driving. I look forward to every single drive in both the BRZ and the S2000. And I think that's just the best thing I can say about them. If I had one complaint about the S2000, it's that I think you need to throw some mods at this to get the handling right. The factory diff just doesn't quite cut it, and the suspension, it needs a little bit of work. On sticky tires, this thing cocks a rear wheel around corners sometimes, and it's kind of a mess on sticky tires. This chassis just wasn't designed for modern tire compounds. But luckily, the aftermarket can solve that very quickly. The BRZ, you can throw some sticky rubber on there, and it's pretty much good to go. You don't really need to do a whole lot to that car except for brakes, maybe some cooling to make it track worthy, and just a lot of fun to drive. I love the tall first gear in the S2000. It's so fun to rev this out. Some slightly more aggressive brake pads on this car. They're a bit difficult to modulate. feels kind of silly doing this comparison on winter tires today, but also it feels kind of right because this is when I enjoy driving these cars the most. In the cold, in the wet, in the snow, sideways. They're just so fun to play with. And yes, they're not as sharp. They don't have as much mechanical grip. You know, there's salt on the roads. Everything's a mess, but it's what I enjoy. And you know, you gotta drive your cars in a manner and in a fashion that you enjoy them. I respect that people want to store away their cars in the winter, keep them clean, but that's just not who I am. This is, for me, peak driving season. So that's when we're doing this comparison. I actually didn't get a chance to take this to the track this year. That's why we still have the aggressive pads on here. The idler pulley went out 10 miles from Gingerman Raceway, and I never got a chance to take this out. So the BRZ, amazing on a racetrack if you trust it around right-hand turns. S2000, I'm sure it's pretty epic with some modifications, with the right modifications. But for now, as street cars, they're both just so good. If you want something to live with on a daily basis, you want a car that can actually perform practical functions, get a BRZ. You want a toy, you want something that's exciting and that just makes every drive an event. Get an S2000 or get a Miata. I will say the S2000 is kind of Miata on steroids, which isn't a bad thing. The front end on this car is just so sharp. Anyway, I think we've said everything. Hopefully we've also shown you some things too. Well guys, with that's a wrap on the driving impressions here in the S2000. Let's hop out, find a parking space, and talk to Chris about his thoughts on the two cars. All right, well I've said just about everything I could ever say. What do you like better?
The BRZ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
I feel like I can enjoy it more at lower speeds, whereas in this, I feel like I have to be at the ragged edge to actually like have fun, like be revving it out to 9,000, which is great and I like doing, but this, I feel like I can just kind of drive it like James May and still have fun.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
So I would have the BRZ.
Okay. That's a good summary. Yeah. I think the thrills are ultimately higher in this car, but they're fewer and farther between, and the BRZ is more fun more of the time.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. All right, on that note, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one. We'll be posting some more videos. I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth on a video either before or after this goes up on some of the modifications with the BRZ, a review on the Winterpeak F-Ice 1 tires from Falken. And of course, we're always doing things to the S2000, so hopefully we can get that UK exhaust mod on here at some point soon. But yeah, good day, good drive.
Good day.
Get sideways at all?
A little bit.
Yeah, it's fun. It's so controllable in the BRZ.
Sideways.
Yeah, pretty much. And this is at low speed. This is actually pretty easy to control too.
Yeah.
You're right though. There's some like greasy sections of on ramp today, and
the front end goes light and vague in this.
It does.
It's kind of scary.
It does a little bit. Yeah. And I think that's partially down to the tire, because on the the sticky RE71 RSs, the front end is just insane on this thing. Like, it's crazy. Both great cars, can't go wrong. Everyone should probably get one of them or all three of them or a Miata.
Yeah.
Okay, where do you want to drive home?
The BRZ.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna put the top down.
All right, there we go.
It's above 32, it's time. Oh my gosh, it's the best.
The top goes down quick.
So fast. Yeah, this is like the fastest top in like the time.
Oh.
Yeah. Besides the Miata that you just like throw back.
Fair enough.
Yeah, this might be the quickest. One thing that should be mentioned with the S2000 for what we're doing right now is it has an excellent heater. Oh my gosh, the heat in this thing blows so hot it almost could hurt you. Crank that thing to max, blast it on full, and you are a toasty driver. Pretty comfortable as a convertible too. Not a ton of wind buffeting. I almost prefer driving this on long distances with the top down than with the top up. Needs an alignment. When I replaced the steering wheel, the splines between the two wheels that I have weren't quite exactly the same, even though I both put them on straight. I could have swapped the hardware, but I think I'm just going to get an alignment on it anyway. We'll throw a little bit of negative camber at the front tires, and that'll probably fix it. It's only a little bit off, but enough to bother me. This is so nice and toasty.
Yeah. Your vent in the convertible mode?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you gotta do the, I go between the foot and face, or foot and hands, and just the whole like through cabin mode. There's vents right here for the shifter, underneath. But it's great because these vents are perfectly positioned to warm your hands.
It's like having a heated steering wheel.
Pretty much, yeah. It heats everything. Let's hear the BRZ.